Okay, Bismillah. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Okay, welcome inshallah to, this is the 11th episode I think of Lisān Lab, and it's also the 11th name of Allah from Surah Al-Hashr. If this is your first time joining or listening, generally, like I was just talking with my friend Ammar here, the goal of these sessions is really just to record good conversations, because if you're passionate about something, then naturally you have good conversations with people. So that's really the main kind of thing here. But obviously we're talking about language, we're talking about Islam, we're talking about faith and the mind and different things like that. Okay, so just a couple of quick announcements about the MindRoots application development. I mentioned in the group that there is a custom GPT that I'm testing, so if anybody wants to test it, basically it's designed to do like a root analysis, kind of like what we do in these sessions, but obviously it's not going to be as good as our conversations, but it's still pretty good. It gives you like some basic statistics on the word, tells you like the base meaning of the word. It tries to kind of like summarize all the different words. Sometimes it does a good job, sometimes it doesn't do a great job. But that's ready for testing if anybody wants to play around with that, or if they want to just use it for research, because it's basically just having like a chat GPT that talks to the MindRoots application, talks to the database. The other thing that will be ready soon is data validation through the chat GPT. So this is actually going to be pretty fun, and it should be available for all levels of Arabic. And basically the idea is that we're going to use the chat GPT to validate all of the data in the database, because most of the data, like the definitions and the meanings and stuff, that's all taken from Lisān Lab, not Lisān Lab, Taj al-Urus, Lane's lexicon, which has Taj al-Urus and all these other different texts. But a lot of the linguistic data that was generated by me through different kind of programs and large language models and stuff like that. So that kind of stuff needs to be checked. Like, is the translation okay? Does the root actually match the word? Is the classification of the word correct? Is it a noun? Is it a verb? Etc. So that's going to be very fun, because it's like thousands and thousands of data points that all need to be verified by human beings to improve the data in the database. Okay, Bismillah. Let's start with the form real quick, because we looked at the form. We've seen this form before. المصور على وزن مفاعل, right? So it has the morphological pattern of مفاعل, and we've come across that form before with متكبر and مهيمن. So we don't really need to discuss too much about it, because we kind of explained that form before. It's an active participle, it's an intensive active participle. So we don't need to spend too much time there. But one thing that I think is kind of interesting that we can kind of bring up here, and it's something that I've thought about most of my studies of language, is why certain forms appear in certain roots and not in other roots. So you can ask this question really at every level of language, right? Like at the verb level, at the noun level, at the plurals, at the so many different ways to kind of look at it. But one of the interesting ways to look at it is through this intensive passive participle, right? Or the صيغة المبالغة لاسم الفاعل. And so what does that mean really? So we come across the intensive active participle often when we're looking at the 99 names, because that's the idea of the 99 names, right? They're talking about aspects of God in the most extreme case. That's why we use the intensive active participle. So like, we said muhaymin is the intensive active participle after some letters are flipped of al-mu'min, right? So it's the intensive form of the believer. Jabbar is another one that we did, right? It's the intensive form of jabir, right? Or the verb being jabara, to heal something. It's the intensive form. We did khaliq and bari', which have the same active participle form, not intensive. But khaliq, it has an intensive form where bari' does not. So in the Quran we have khaliq, meaning creator, but then we also have the intensive form, which is khallaq. So like what I'm trying to say is that like we don't always have the intensive form. Like for example, we say Rahman, we can say Rahim, but there's no such thing as Raham, right? Like we don't say that in Arabic, right? The form you can make up the word, you can use the the morphological form and try and make the form, make the word, but we don't use that in Arabic. And usually that's for different reasons. Scholars say it's usually because the sound is not what the Arabs are used to. But if you believe that all sounds have meaning, then that means that there has to be more reason as to why some forms show up in some verbs, in some roots, and they don't appear in others. So, like for example, al-musawwir we said is the intensive active participle, but there's a couple of different kinds of intensive active participles. So you have the basic active participle, which is like fa'il, and then when you make it intensive, you get fa'al, right? And then you have another kind of active participle, which has a more causative, instrumental kind of sense, right? And that's mufa'il, or muf'il, sorry. And then when you make it intense, you get mufa'il. So that's what happens here. For this root, we get musawwir, right? But there's no sawwar. So it's just an interesting point if you're interested in Arabic morphology. It's kind of curious, why do we have some forms and not some other forms? And there's just some science and some understanding about this already. Like if you look at like the very basic verb, you have three types, right? It's usually like fa'ala, right? And the only thing that changes is the middle vowel. So sometimes you have fa'ala, sometimes you have fa'ula, and sometimes you have fa'ila, right? So most common is fa'ala with the short a sound on the middle vowel, and usually those are for like action verbs, like physical verbs. Whereas if you have like fa'ila or fa'ula, right, that's usually something to do with like not physical actions, states, like something became a certain color or something became a certain kind of state, then you would change the middle vowel. So all these things, like if you start, one of the goals of this mind roots application is to map all of these different parts of language just to different things in the mind, right? So most of the words that we have in language are action words because a lot of the things that we do in life or most of the things that we do in life are physical, right? Whereas changing of state or internal kind of things, they are less apparent. Okay, khair inshallah. So that's just some quick thoughts on the form of this name of Allah, al-Musawwir. And yeah, unless anybody has any thoughts, then we can kind of jump into the root, which has all the fun stuff that we can kind of explore. Okay, so Musawwir is another interesting name of Allah that we also use in colloquial Arabic often, right? So if we go back to the list here, Rahman, that's Rahima. It's kind of common, you kind of use the words in that root somewhat, if you're talking about somebody that's died, or, if you're asking somebody to be kind to you or be merciful to you, you might use this root. Malik also is kind of common, because we kind of use it for like physical, like grabbing things or holding things. We kind of use that word. Quddus, not very common. Salam, obviously we know that's common because we say salam all the time, and it has other meanings of like safety and being sound. The rest of these names that we did, not really very common. Roots, mutakabbir is an exception. Mutakabbir, kabura, kabir, those are common words in Arabic, meaning big and large, so we use that a lot. Khaliq and bari, not really very common, but musawwir, very common. Um, so the base word actually, if you just translate the base word out of context, we use it in modern Arabic to actually mean like a photographer, right? So a musawwir is again that active participle form, right? The doer, right? And the action that we use to describe in modern Arabic is somebody that's literally taking images, taking photos, taking pictures. So we use that form for that. Um, some other ideas that we get from this root actually are, also obviously like a picture itself, right? So musawwir is the name of Allah, but in modern Arabic it also can mean, um, to take a picture or a photographer. And then from that we also get like surah, right? Well, surah means an image, right, or a picture. It can also mean, like your appearance as well. Um, One other meaning also is imagination, right? We talked before, or we talk a lot in this group, in this community, about, kind of mystical ideas of imagination. And, there's this idea in Ibn Arabi and in Sufi thought that, like, creation is the imagination of Allah, right? Allah is our reality, and we are His imagination. It's a kind of a poetic idea. It's interesting. I never really come across it before this group. But this name Al Musawwir really, it's translated different ways. The fashioner we see here, the designer is another one I've kind of heard as well. Um, Sorry, what was I gonna say? The fashioner. Imagination, right? I was talking about imagination. So, yeah, this word this name of Allah, I think, it captures that idea of Allah's imagination, right? Which is, another way we can kind of translate this name, I think, as actually also like the imaginator, right? Like, um, we don't say that in English. It's not a real word, right? But if you again, when we talk about the names of Allah, we're talking about qualities that human beings have sometimes, right? Like kindness or, the ability to restore something or create something even. But when we talk about it in terms of Allah, in the context of God, in the context of truth, Allah does it in the most extreme and most perfect way. So you have this idea of like imagination in this root as well. And we actually, one of the words that you find in colloquial Arabic and modern Arabic, I'm not sure if it really, I think it still had this sense in classical Arabic as well. But if you say tasawwur, right, it can mean like to imagine or to think, right? It can mean like, oh, did you, um, could you imagine, right? If you said that to somebody, right? If you said like tasawwur, right, like in a question form, it could literally mean, could you imagine this, or could you think of something like this? So all of those ideas are present in this name, al musawwir, and in this root of sad, waw, and ra. Oh, that's nice. Asma just said that you find this word in Urdu as well. We have a lot of Urdu speakers in the group, and we often make these kind of connections. Yeah, I think in Urdu you also say surah, right? Is that what you're saying, Asma? Yeah, I think that's the word. That I think it also
We did
means.
use the word tasawwur as well.
Sorry?
Surah is used as well, but so is tasawwur.
Oh, to mean imagination as well, or like thinking?
More kind of contemplative, like Are you
Yeah.
able to contemplate this? It's used poetically in proper Urdu, but I mean, I'm not an expert in Urdu by any means. I'm sure when Zinira or somebody else comes, he could probably like kind of expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much the sense also in modern colloquial Arabic as well. We can maybe make this point in the group, see if we have some more native speakers. I mean, I am a native speaker, but I grew up in America, so some colloquial stuff escapes me. Um, but yeah, that sense of like imagination and image, right? It's all present in this root. Um, One thing I didn't mention, and usually we start this way actually when we start talking about the root, but it's we usually what I like to do is look at the very earliest kind of meaning that you find in the root, or the earliest verb usually, and in this case actually, I think it's this word, this verb right here, sarahu, right? So that's the base verb here, sarahu yasuru, and it means um, for one to incline his neck, right? For one to incline in general, but specifically or especially as Lane points out here, right? The neck, right? So like, what's the connection to like images and imagination and contemplation? I think it's kind of obvious, right? Like if you see something interesting, right, you kind of peer your head, right? You kind of extend your neck forward, right? And I'm always fascinated when I find these things in the Arabic language, because you can see how the human mind like starts from something very simple, very basic, just like moving your head a certain way, and then from that you get much much bigger ideas like um, design and imagination and the image. Um, yeah, so I think that's really powerful there as well, to kind of bring the meaning together. That al musawwir comes from extending your neck. It's not a common. You don't find that usage very common in modern Arabic. I've never really actually heard it used that way, but originally or classically, that was the base meaning there.
Yeah, and with tasawwur, you were like on point with tasawwur in the Arabic with the imagination.
Yeah, yeah.
And there is one other thing, like sarra wajhahu is like to to grunt your face.
What is
So
it?
sarrul wajh,
Oh, sarr.
sarrul wajh,
Oh, okay.
yes, that's like to grunt, to like make the face of like an angry face. That's sarrul wajh.
Sarr. Is it the same root?
I think it's related. It's sarra,
Sarra.
or like making that face. I don't know if there's a connection there.
Yeah, I mean that's another interesting point that we come across a lot when we study the roots and you study morphology, is that this root has what
The wow.
the wow, right, which a lot of the old grammarians, they called it a weak root, right, because it has a weak letter, right, because the alif, the wow, and the ya are weak. And by weak it doesn't mean like they have less meaning or something like that. I don't think so anyway. But really, what it means is that like the sound isn't like that stable, right? So um, it changes when you add different patterns or morphology. It doesn't stay consistent in terms of like. That's why we can say, for example, in, there's no general intensive active participle. We don't say sawar, really. Or actually, look, maybe I'm wrong. There is a sawar here. Oh, but yeah, it's it's an exception. It looks like, because it doesn't have the meaning of an intensive active participle. It looks like it's just like a technical term for a bird. Sawar here. Um, but yeah, weak roots kind of make figuring out patterns a little bit difficult, because the letters aren't stable when you put them through the different forms. They change sometimes. They flip completely sometimes. Um, yeah.
Do you think like I love to think about it in like adding dimensions and layers to the meaning. It can be not really connected like a direct connection on the surface, but any roots with any users through the Arabic language, it's they all connected in
Yeah,
a very like a poetic way. So
yeah,
it
yeah,
can be like even now with this the bird, I can see like an indirect connection
yeah.
to the idea.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty and also the difficulty of this kind of study and these kind of sessions is that everything is connected, right? You can connect anything to anything, but if but it's tricky to do it in a way that really like it sinks in, if that makes sense. Um,
Like right now with Sawar with the bird, it's like calling the bird, and that's it's as if like you are imagining the bird and you say something or you call the bird and then they will be there. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah. I can kind of see what you're saying. Or you can kind of think of it also as like the bird. Birds are always calling, right? They're always like tweeting, making sounds. So maybe you can kind of think of it in that way too. Um,
yeah, I love it.
yeah, we can look later. I want to talk about one more thing, but we can try and flip the middle letter to like a ya or an alif in the database and see what other words come because they will be very similar, I think, and there'll also be like a connection. Um, One of my favorite examples of this, I talked about it once, I think, in the group, but it's a very, very old debate between the two major schools of Arabic thought, Arabic grammarian thought, I guess about maybe 1,000 years ago. And that's between the Basrans and the Kufans. So Basra is in Syria and Kufa is in Iraq, and those are the two major schools of Arabic thought. So one of the very first issues that they had, right, was what is the root of the word ism, right? And ism in Arabic is alif sin mim, right? And when we say ism, right, ism, and it means name. It means name. In linguistics, Arabic linguistics, it also means noun, right? But there's a difference of opinion on which what the actual base root is. So the Basran said that it comes from sin, mim, and waw, right? So the weak letter is at the end, right? And that root generally comes from a few different ideas. Sumu or samat, which is sky, right? And they say that the Basrans say that's where you get the idea of naming, right? From this idea of sky and sumu and elevation, right? Because their thinking is that like when you name something, you elevate it, right? You separate it from everything else and it becomes elevated. So that was their thinking. But the Kufans, right? They said no. They think that the root is wow, the weak letter first, seen, and then meme, right? And their reasoning was that the root of this, or one of the main meanings of this root is wesm, right, which is a tattoo, right, a mark, right. So you can see both of that. In my opinion, I have my own theory as to like language origins and what the how roots actually work, which is a little bit different than both of the classical thoughts here. But you can see, I think, right, very easily that both of them make sense, right? Wesm and sumu, they both make a little more. To me, wesm makes a little bit more sense, right? It's a little bit more intuitive, it's a little bit more obvious, right? Because like a tattoo or a mark, right, is it's very similar to a name, right? That's how ancient peoples probably started marking things, right? Is by or started naming things is by marking them.
Yeah, and Western also like to give uh, like to distinguish something with a specific character.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. I remember.
Even like Wissam is like driven from that root, and it's like to Wasmu Shay, to give it character, to give it like a specific characterization.
Yeah, yeah. I'm remembering in the Quran you have simahum fi wujuhihim. I don't know if it's the same root of wasm or not. Like if you go to some of the more common sources here. Like if we try to look up ism here, it's under sumu. So that, like the Basrans, the Syrians from Basra, they are the more, I don't know. I guess you could say they're the more logical group, and so most of their opinions are the ones that we currently have. That most of the consensus comes from the Basrans. So if you go to like corpusquran.com and you look for ism, it's going to be under the Basran idea. So they're going to have it under sumu. Um, yeah. So that's kind of an interesting thing there. Here you see ism, right, is under the same as sama.
Yeah, and to your point, both make sense.
Yeah, both I think make sense, and I think that's really the beauty of studying morphology is it gives you like a little peek into how the brain works, how the mind works. Yeah, so I think this is another one of those roots that's very intuitive. It has a lot of depth, I think, because you go from something very simple like peering your neck forward, and then you have the idea of an image, the idea of photography in modern worlds, or imagination. Um, but I guess we should talk a little bit more about what it means for Allah to have this name. Um, so, like I mentioned, this is the last name that's mentioned in Surah Al-Hashr. Um, there's like 11 names that are mentioned in 2 ayahs at the end there, and this is the last name. And it's also the last name of, the 11 names are divided between 2 ayahs at the end of that surah. And the last 3 names are, kind of tied together, and, there's been, some, a lot of people, I've even heard that some people consider it one name, right? Al-Khaliq, al-Bari, al-Musawwir. Some people consider them like one name, like Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Some people, say that's one name, it's not 2 names. So some people say Al-Khaliq, al-Bari, al-Musawwir is also one name. Each of the next name is modifying, it's like an adjective modifying the previous name. So that's kind of an interesting point there. But I think there's also something really cool here about the 3 names in that they kind of, to me at least, and I think, in our 3 discussions, we kind of see like 3 levels of like creation. The way I kind of imagine it is Al-Khaliq, the first one, is really just about like the base level, right? Like Allah creates the base level of existence of creation, right? Like matter itself. Um, cells or atoms or whatever, however you want to think of it. And then Al-Bari, which I like to think of as like the evolver, right? Or even the designer. That's when Allah takes the matter, right? And like it gives it like a design, an ability to adapt, an ability to move, the ability to kind of change, and it kind of like you can think of it kind of like like a set of instructions maybe, right? So like the khaliq, the beginning, the first stage is just just matter, right? Like just existence, however maybe you can think of it like that. And then the second stage is like the instructions for how all creation manifests itself in different contexts and different environments. But then al-Musawwir, the last final stage, right, is really more kind of like at a surface level, I think. Not in the sense of like superficial, right, but in the sense of like aesthetics and like beauty and like form and image, right? We've said, I think in the Quran, the ayah is I forget the ayah, but فَأَحْسَنَ صُوَرَكُمْ, right, is the line that we find in the Quran, right? That Allah has perfected your image, right? And I think that's the way I kind of see it. The 3 names, right? So like just Al-Khaliq, base matter. Al-Bari, the one who evolves the matter, who gives it instruction, gives it direction, gives it a way of like moving in reality. And then Al-Musawwir is again the the one who like puts the final touches on it, makes it beautiful. Gives
What
it
word is actually, sorry, what word is actually used in the Quran when Allah says He perfected their religion?
deenakum. Deen, I guess would be the
No, not for religion, but for perfecting, because you said about Him fashioning the like insan. So you mentioned right now the that God created human in the perfect shape and form.
mm.
Does He use the same word when He speaks about the deen as well, like that
Oh
He
no.
perfected and fashioned it, or?
No, actually that's a good point.
I think it's from tamam.
Yeah, فاليوم
أتم
أتممت.
أتممت
Yeah, أتممت لكم.
أتممت لكم دينكم.
Yeah, so in that case, it's yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point about what's the difference between. I mean, both are kind of translated as excellent, right? Tamam is kind of excellent, and ahsan or
In the same time, tamam, it's conclusive.
mm,
So there's like an end to like the perfection in a
mm.
way that this is the final form.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? That would make sense, especially in the context of deen and religion. Like, and I think the from the history we know that was like the last ayah I think that was revealed, right?
It's debatable, but yeah,
What is it?
there's a debate on which if it
Oh, which
was
one is
the
it?
last ayah, but it was revealed in the last Hajjat al-Wada, in the last Hajj
Right,
of
right.
Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
I saw some, yeah.
But that's like an amazing connection, Asma, between the concept of the
Excellence.
tamam and yeah.
Yeah, and ihsan or فأحسن صوركم. Yeah, perfected your image. Um, so yeah,
And for the three names, if I can add one thing,
of
it's
course.
like with it's my understanding and from like trying to study the names, the connection between the three names is so clear, and even like with the early scholars, as you said, a lot of scholars consider them like the same name with like different levels and different adding layers to the same building unit, which is the khalq. So that the khalq is, and even in Quran, Allah will challenge that if there is another khaliq, because the khalq itself is like from nothing to something, like to create something from nothing, and that's the building unit, as you said. Like you can think about it as the matter itself, the like the building fabric of the universe and life itself. That's the khalq. With the bari, and I think it's one of my favorite names, um, because it's with the bari, it's adding the functionality, but like perfecting the like you can even for living creatures, the khalq is like with the cells, with the organic matter itself, right? And then bari is the the different physiologies and the anatomy itself, like the even in Arabic, bara, like driven from that in very modern Arabic, when you sharpening a pencil, تبري القلم,
Right.
and that's like to sharpen it to a perfect. So you can use it if you sharpen it and it's still dull or too sharp. You wouldn't. It's not serving the purpose of smooth writing. So bara'a is to get it to that perfect functionality within the ecosystem. Like everything is connected. All life forms are connected. And to get it to that precision, like that perfect form of functionality. And that's like al-bari. And then al-musawwir is adding the beauty and majesty
Mm.
to each form of life. And some scholars added al-badi'a as a fourth dimension to that.
That is a name, yeah, but we hit it later. I think in the 99 names, it's one of the last names. I think.
Yes. And I just wanted to mention like that some scholars added like al-khaliq, al-bari, al-musawwir, al-badi'a. And that's like even I know we're gonna get to that later, inshallah.
Yeah. The Badia is also one of my favorite names because uh, it's also one of the names for one of the sciences in language, actually, right? So in is another thing that I really love is the difference between Western and Arabic linguistics. But Arabic linguistics is divided mainly in three groups: Nah, Sarf, and Balagha. And in Balagha, which is like rhetoric, um, there's a science called Ilm al-Badi', right? And the knowledge of al-Badi' or the knowledge of innovation is one way of translating it, right? It's really about where they study like it's the science of saying things in new and effective ways, right? So a lot of it is like studying poetry, studying metaphor, studying different linguistic and literary devices um, that convey meaning in in different ways. Um,
And that's exactly the dimension added to the khalq is
right.
like the evolution. That's the Badia. It's things evolves. Even after like Musawwar is the beauty and the majesty of like perfecting. Bada is the functionality, precise role to play in this ecosystem. And Musawwar is adding the beauty to that. And Al Badia even giving the ability to evolve,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even.
reacting to that ecosystem.
Yeah, I think there's even more levels. I don't think it's just the three, and Badia adds another one. But I'm remembering there's a du'a, that we say, oh Allah protect us, min sharri ma khalaqa wa dhara'a wa bara'a. Right.
Wabara.
Yeah. So I forget what dhara'a means exactly, but it's in between. You see it here now. It's in between khalq and bara. Right. So it's man khalaqa wa dhara'a wa bara. So like probably like
Yeah.
another level of like granularity in between, all the levels of creation. And, who knows, there's probably even more levels, that we don't know, and more names of Allah
Yeah.
that we don't know.
Subhanallah. And Dara is like to insert something somewhere,
Dara, right,
to
yeah.
add it to be part of something.
Right, okay.
Like Dara'akum fil ardi
Right.
is like that's one of them. Yeah.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair. Okay, so the last thing I have in my notes, I think, is so this idea of like we talked about a couple of times about how all of the names are usually kind of divided into two types, either Jalali names, names of like might, or names of Jamal, right? Jamali names, names of beauty, right? So names that make you like hopeful and make you, think of the mercy and beauty and wonder of Allah, that give you hope and faith, and then names that kind of maybe give you more fear or awareness, or names that you invoke, when you're looking for, Allah's might. So I think all three of these names, we could say at a surface level, um, and we've said this before in previous sessions, right? Like some names, like Jabbar, for example, is generally considered a Jalali name, right? A name that exemplifies the might of Allah. Um, but the way we talked about it, and we got into the depths of it, and we could see that in a lot of ways it has a very Jamali aspect to it as well, right? And I think this is an interesting idea, is that all of the names, or even if one aspect is more dominant than the other, all of the names still have both aspects. Um, and I was trying to think about this today, and I think it was Yasmin or that she put a note, a few hours ago, kind of similar to what I was thinking about a few hours ago as well, is how all of these names um, kind of showcase the different levels of creation, like we said, but also the different ways, and all the names of Allah in general, not just these three, but all the names, they kind of also reflect the different ways in which Allah has blessed us, right? Some people are blessed with, physical strength. Some people are blessed with beauty and generosity, or we all have aspects of the names in our own self as well. So that was Yasmin's note that she was kind of mentioning. But what I was kind of thinking about, to bring it back to the whole Jamal thing, beauty and might, is that like these three names We can kind of think about the might or the jalal aspect of these three names in terms of how Allah tests us, right? And I think that's also where you can always find like the might in the beautiful names of Allah, right? Is that like if you're blessed with beauty, right? If you're blessed with generosity or physical strength, or whatever it is, that's also always going to be a test for you, right? Like, the way I was thinking about it was kind of the opposite of what Yasmin was saying in the group, because I was kind of thinking of it in like philosophical terms. The time, like the question of the problem of evil. Like why does Allah create evil, right? Why does Allah allow evil to happen? Why does that's the classic philosophical problem. And as Muslims, we understand that there's we don't get to decide what is good, right? Allah has more wisdom than us. But then you can ask the same question, with respect to these three names as well, right? Like why does Allah make people that are not that beautiful and people that are very beautiful, right? Like why is that disparity there? And the answer, I think, again is you know kind of straightforward, and that everybody is tested with different things, right? If you're a very, very beautiful person or very, very strong things, that's also going to be your test, right? If you're not somebody that's very attractive, or not someone that's very smart, or not someone that can speak well, or whatever the case may be, that's your test, right? Everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and I think that's another way that we can kind of find the jalali aspect, or the might aspect in the beautiful names of Allah. If you like tie it back to the three levels of creation that we talked about, like base matter, design, and instruction, and then like beauty and aesthetic. All three of those levels of creation are also tests in a way, right? Like basic physical creation, basic physical matter is a test sometimes, right? Like it takes effort and strength, and intention to, like, just to get up in the morning, just to walk, just to fight gravity, right? Like sometimes you're trying to wake up for Fajr, and that blanket is the heaviest thing, is heaviest thing in the world, right? So that's one level of how khalq, how creation, is beautiful, but also a test. And the same, with also like our our DNA and our evolution, our physiology. That's also a test for us in different ways. And then of course, physical beauty, our image. That's one of the biggest tests for many people, if not all human beings, right? I think everybody at some point is concerned with how they look and how they were created. But we remember that there's blessing and test in everything that Allah gives us. I think that's all my notes. I think that's everything. I'm a little wired on coffee, so I think I went through all my notes very fast there. So if anybody has any thoughts or anything they want to share, please do. Otherwise,
Assalamu alaikum.
walaikum assalam.
Yeah, subhanAllah. I just saw how relevant this was to me because I mean, I was late again to class because of I had ruqya and I have been going through just like, a lot
I
of healing
it's not a class in here.
stuff.
I just have to it's
It is a class. You're a teacher, so
no,
just
no,
accept
no,
it.
no. It's really a conversation. But khair, inshallah, continue.
Okay. Too much modesty. I mean, you need to have balance. You can accept, like you can accept things without
I mean,
being
the only, I
arrogant,
mean, I have taught Arabic and I have taught in this style before, but the only reason I say that is because, like, there's not a lot of structure to these conversations, and I think that maybe is a little bit off-putting to some people, but I think it's also very enticing for some people as well. That's the only reason I say it's not a class. I'm not a teacher. It's more like I mean, it's not even like a book club like some of the other groups that we have, because we don't have a book. We're very, very free form, up in the air. That's all I'm saying.
Mhm.
But continue, please.
Okay, well, it's an educational space, I guess. Um,
Khair, inshallah.
so yeah, so I was just thinking like last week when we were talking about body, and it's all about like like purification going back, I guess, to the original design, which is kind of what like my healing has been about. And subhanAllah, today the Iraqi told me, Inti bint Jamila wa Hilwa, but you're thinking really bad thoughts because of your illness, and that's taking away your beauty. And I just thought about, but I don't feel beautiful because I've been really sick. And now, like when I literally entered the room, you were saying Allah like created you in the most beautiful form. And I was thinking about how much of beauty, like physical beauty, right, is just health. Like if you're really, really skinny, that usually doesn't like look beautiful. Or like things that are markers of health, like, like women are mostly marketed, like things like blush and stuff, right? But these are like things that you would naturally have at least you were a certain skin tone if you were healthy. Like, so it's just like, yeah, I don't know. That just kind of connected for me, like about how we talked about khalq and Allah creates everything pure, like, and how bari'a is like, bad, linked to bad, right? And like how everything is created pure and innocent, but that means everything is created healthy. And that means like and that health is beauty. And also that we also need to like take responsibility, for our illness. Like Allah does not create something that is inherently ill, or because illness is imbalance. But yeah, sorry, I'm all over the place. Anyway, so the other thing that I sort of remembered was about when someone was speaking about Badia. It is so Badia is one name, and then there's Badia Samawat wal Ard, and that is like I feel like that is like the quickest creation because that's the manifestation of that is kun fayakun, right? So that's like I think of all the names of creation, that's the name that's like instant creation.
Mm.
I also thought of another name. It's not explicitly mentioned. I consider it a name. It is sort of explicitly mentioned, but I just like to like sort of infer names. But I think it's in Surah Al-Waqi'ah. أَأَنْتُمْ أَنشَأْتُمْ شَجَرَتَهَا أَمْ نَحْنُ الْمُنشِئُونَ.
Mm.
So munshi is a name, and so nasha is another type of creation.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about also, it's so funny because you guys were talking about nasha and zara, and I was in the kitchen and I had there's this cornstarch packet in front of me, and in Arabic it says nashat al-dharra.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That.
So then, there's like Nesh. I was thinking also about like just how I've been feeling about like my body like being really ill, and I was thinking I feel like I need to just like like I need God, not me. I need God to just like recreate me at this point. And then Subhanallah, the ayah came to me. I think inna ansha'nahunna insha'a. Sorry, astaghfirullah, I'm
Yeah.
probably saying it wrong.
That's correct. I think.
Yeah, so it's like about this recreation then. So I guess Ansha, I don't know if Nisha is, I mean, it is also manifested in this world because Allah is talking about the tree as, a manifestation of Munshi. But it's also like a whole recreation entirely where you get a brand new body in Jannah, inshallah. So yeah, there was something else. Oh yeah, one more thing was about Badiya. I used to recite that a lot, every day, 86 times, because that's the value of it, or numerical value of the name. But the intention with which I recited it was for hikmah, because that's what it said, like whoever recites Badiya gets hikmah. And I was like, I don't know how. And subhanAllah, someone said that it's a kind of creativity. And I did actually start writing poetry after that. So subhanAllah, maybe I'm sure it's probably a manifestation of that.
What did you
That's
say
one thing.
was a kind of creativity? Sorry.
That bada,
Oh,
or like
right, right.
Badiya
Yeah,
is
yeah.
like it's
Yeah, no, it's literally in under one of the sciences of rhetoric, right? Which is, that's usually the science where you're studying poetry and like why Allah uses certain kind of phrasings and stuff like that. In that study of rhetoric or balagha, as we call it in Arabic, is that science of badia, ilm al badia, or like I'm trying to find a better translation in English, but it would be like it's also kind of like rhetoric, but it's just specifically like how to use language, effectively and like in a novel way, right? How to use language kind of like what you were saying about badia being like the quickest kind of like creation. Bada'a, right? The base verb or ilm al badia. That science is about like creating things in a new way, in a way that's never been done before. Um, you can be creating the same thing.
right. SubhanAllah, that's also like a negative thing, right? For the Salafis, it's like كل بدعة ضلالة
Oh, right,
وكل
right.
ضلالة في النار.
Yeah, that's a very good connection there too. It's a very controversial phrase. I remember when I would hear it, being younger, I'd never liked the way it was translated. Right, like, every innovation is is a bid'ah, right? And every bid'ah is uh, or sorry,
ضلالة, and
yeah,
every ضلالة is in the
yeah,
nar.
yeah,
Obviously,
every
I don't think that's true. The reason why I said it in a very mocking tone, I feel really bad, is because there is such a thing as bid'ah hasana and like
right,
butcher. I
exactly,
think,
yeah,
it's just such a problem because I have to deal with people like that a lot. But then you're reading from a mushaf is a bid'ah. Rasulullah never, I don't think, like had, people didn't have a mushaf at the time. People didn't have, by the way, this is one of the things that like in Islamic ethics, this was actually a conversation that people had when mics were introduced into masajid. So like if you follow, like if I'm praying in a jama'ah behind an imam, right? The scholars asked, is this like allowed? Like, should we do that? Because are we following? So basically, some said that if the mic simply amplifies the voice of the imam, then it's allowed. Otherwise, it's going to be haram because if the mic absorbs the voice and then emits like a new like frequency, like brand new voice. So but that is a bid'ah that we all use. Like that's an innovation in the religion, and it's so normal. Like it's in the haram. There's mics,
yeah,
and we
yeah,
use that in the prayer. In the masjid, there's mics. In the adhan, like the adhan is happening right now, and there's mics. These are all bid'ahs,
yeah.
and these are bid'ah hasana. These are religion, like these are things in the religion that the people who fight bid'ah apparently say. I just wanted to share something. This is from the Hizb al-Wiqaya. I've never understood why he was saying this, but now I just understood it now. It's one of the du'as, and he says, وَجَمِّلْنِي يَا بَدِيعَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ يَا ذَا الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ بِالْفَصَاحَةِ وَالْبَلَاغَةِ وَالْبَرَاعَةِ واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So he's using يا بديع السماوات والأرض. He's calling on بديع السماوات والأرض for balagha.
Wait, can you repeat that? I missed some of the Arabic. I didn't hear the balagha part.
Yeah, it's just the other. Okay. وجملني يا بديع السماوات والأرض يا ذا الجلال والإكرام بالفصاحة والبلاغة
Uh,
والبراعة
uh,
of the ayah واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي.
right, okay, yeah. I think bara is also another level of creation, right? I don't remember exactly what bara means, but um, I think it also means to create in a kind of an innovative way. Um, there's something else that came to mind. Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, you reminded me of a friend of mine. He just went to Hajj, and there was like a question of like the hotel is like part of the haram. So like you're in one of the towers or something like that, and you can hear that, and you can hear the prayer going on. So there's a question of like, can you pray, in your hotel room and just listen? And some people say, yeah, it's okay. But yeah, the whole thing about innovation, it's just I think it's a translation problem. It's like the idea really is like coming up with new things in faith, in religion, in belief, in our creed. That's really what is going astray, and that's really what is warned against. um, there was something else you said that I forgot to write down, but the other thing I wanted to mention, I'm forgetting what just came to mind from what you were saying, Zinira. But the other thing
I was wondering, could you? I don't know if that's about it, but what would you say is the difference of nasha'a as compared to the other types of creation was mentioned?
I don't know actually. We can here take a look. I opened it up because somebody mentioned it. Oh, okay.
In
That
insha is to construct, but nasha is a different form.
yeah,
Like
Nasha
with
here.
the
Yeah,
yeah.
what Lane has here is to elevate something, right? And it's also a synonym for resurrection, Nasha, right? Nashat al-akhirah, right? Here meaning the day of resurrection. So I guess the difference there is a kind of like um, a sense of like elevation, a sense of like Also tanzih, right? Like separating something or honoring it even. I think that's kind of uh, it's interesting because oh yeah, that's what I was trying to get to is, or that's what you reminded me of. It's like, I think you said it actually, but like in Arabic, the word for cornstarch is nasha, I think, right? Or
Nasha
nasha,
without the
nasha without that
hamza,
without the hamza. Okay, so
hamza then,
maybe
and it's more like a powder thing. Like it's
right.
just represent the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like after doing something, the end product of like breaking down something, and that's the nasha is like the very fine end product of uh, grounding something,
Right, right. So maybe it's a different.
metaphorically and like physically.
Yeah, maybe it's a different root because I don't see it here, or maybe it's more a modern word. Yeah, but yeah,
It's
different.
usually something that's so fine you can breathe it in.
Right, right.
Like with nasha dhura, like the cornstarch, it's like that's what they call it that because it's very fine powder.
Yeah,
But the idea itself, it's like an end product of a process of breaking something, and that's without the hamza. But insha, it's like construct something, to build something up.
yeah, yeah. So that's a different form, but it could be the same root. Well, I mean,
But
again,
they relate it, yeah,
yeah. I mean,
directly relate.
yeah. Again, what's happening here is like the weak letter is just making it difficult to find exactly all the different words, and how they're exactly related. I don't see any other roots here that end. So maybe it could be like the weak letter could be in the middle. It could be a root with the weak letter in the middle. So that's maybe why we're not seeing it here. But yeah, that's interesting. And that's also another point I wanted to make. What I think, Ammar, you were saying about how al-bari' or bara'a is related to barra, I think, or to sharpen something. So again, that could also be a different root because I don't think we came across that when we were looking at al-bari' last week. But what we did see was that the base root is kind of like bari'a, to become innocent or become free of something, or to go back to like your original state, your innocent state. But I think that is related to um, the root of for or the word for sharpness. I think you can kind of make a connection there as well. But again, like once you have the weak letters in there, the meanings become a little bit separated. So I'll try and find exactly, see if I can find which root that is, um, and I'll
So on the thing, it just says Nashat, like with Noon, Sheen, Alice, Hamza. Is it not the same word? Like it's still Noon, Sheen, Hamza, right?
for what?
For the cornstarch. That's what it says on the
I'm not
package.
sure actually. I'll double check that one too because again with the weak roots you have to kind of check like every single possible.
Sorry, what's a weak root?
So
Not everybody is an expert here.
no, sorry, it's because you came late to class. I'm just kidding. No, we mentioned
Now it's
Oh,
a
well,
class.
excuse you, I was dying, but anyway. Oh yeah.
no, no, no. Of course, I'm just kidding.
In
But
case you accepted, it's a class.
yeah, but I mean, the Arabs used to call any root that has a alif or a waw or a ya in it a weak letter, just because it doesn't mean like they have less meaning or they have less anything other than that they're not as stable when you apply morphological patterns to them, right? So like if you want to apply like, if'al or fa'il or maf'ul or something like that, if there's a weak letter, it doesn't have a very regular pattern. Or if it has one of those three letters, the pattern, it's not easy to predict how the letter is going to change. Like for example, when we saw mu'min, al-muhaymin, right? Those are actually the same roots, but the hamza because it's weak and unstable, it becomes a ha in muhaymin in the intensive form. So that kind of thing happens often in Arabic, and that's why they call them weak letters. But yeah, I'll have to take a look you know we can kind of try and see here. Um,
Can I one thing like for here?
yeah,
If
of course.
can we check the I can see yes. Translate it as recovering. Oh yeah, right. No, maybe we
Oh,
can
are you
revisit it.
Oh, you're trying to look.
I'm trying to like with the connection to. It's a modern way of using the word for like تبري القلم القلم,
It's
but
actually
how they got it to the is to get it to the optimum, like to recover the optimum functionality. Like it's related to bad it in a way. It's just an example for like modern use to just make it easy for people to understand it. But how I was taught that one, that the connection, it's from the same root.
it is. You're saying it is the same root as bara, ba ra
Yes,
hamza.
yes,
Yeah, yeah. I mean that could. I mean, to me, the connection is, I can kind of see it in, like, if you're sharpening something, right? Then you're you're defining its purpose, right? Its purpose is to be sharp, for purposes of pointing at something or writing something or carving something, right? So that's still really similar to everything we're saying about, al-bari', right, as the evolver, as the one that's designing the system of creation, right? I think that's also, I think it's connected there as well. But I will double check and try and find exactly um, what, how many different weak letters or weak radicals or vowels connect with bar, with the ba and the ra, just to kind of disambiguate those two things there. And also for nasha, right? I'll take a look at that root, see if we can kind of figure out how many different weak letters mix with that. Because you can put it in the beginning, like we said, with sumu and wasm, right? You could put it in the middle sometimes. You could put it at the end. So there's like, a total of, like, I guess you get 6 different possible permutations for every 3 letters. So 6 times 3 is like 18 different possible roots that could be, uh, you know, that there's 18 different possible classifications that traditional Arabic grammarians might have put um, those words into. So I'll look into that,
it's
inshallah.
fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah,
That's like the beauty of Arabic language.
yeah, yeah.
I was also wondering, this reminded me of the weak, what was it? Roots? Radicals?
Weak letters, yeah, weak roots, yeah, same thing.
Okay, so yeah, that just reminded me of like last week. And Eid and al-Mu'eid and like Maw'id, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
have this thing about whether Maw'id is from Wa'id or from
Yes, yes,
Ada.
yes. Yeah.
But then it's also like, you know how when I read people say, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, say, Asakum min Awada? I think Awada?
I've never heard that
Ru
before.
Ruwada.
Awada, right? So then there's a wow there, right? But it's actually Eid, that's the root of that. But then there's a wow in Maw'id too. And wow is the root of that.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
and that's like even the translation of like Ruwada, it means like to have like more Eids to come.
Oh, okay.
So
Right,
you'll
so
be
it means
alive
like may
for
you
like
be,
Eids and
yeah, so
many
it means,
Eids
I
to come.
love it.
What is the phrase
Yeah, it
again?
makes basically asakum min awada. So like
عساكم من
like
روادة.
Oh, okay, okay,
so
okay.
like may you be someone upon whom it keeps coming back again and
Right, right,
again.
right, right, right.
So then it's like, but then that means the root of it is with the yeah, but it's
Mm,
manifesting, I guess, as the wow.
mm,
So
well,
And
then
that's more like of the Arabian Gulf dialogue.
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
khaleejin.
That explains why I
in
never heard it.
in Sudanese dialogue, we say ربنا يعود الأيام, and it's exactly the same meaning, that you praying that people will live more and more Eids to come.
Hmm. Egyptians, we say كل سنة وأنت طيب. That's all. That's usually what we say. We just
Basic.
yeah, every year you're good every year, or you're better every year. And, it's kind of a colloquial phrase. I mean, it's kind of similar to the traditional, like, I think during the time of the Prophet they would say كل عام وأنتم بخير. Actually, I don't know when that started, which is, I mean, it's the same thing. It's just more formal Arabic. Every year, and may every year bring goodness for you. But
Sorry, I also wanted to ask something about like what you guys were speaking about beginning. That wasn't the beginning. It was beginning for me, but
mm,
um, about itmam versus like husn, right?
mm,
So I was thinking. I mean, I guess I'm just kind of thinking about like husn versus jamal because it says like I think what you guys were talking about was ahsana suwarakum, right?
yeah.
Sawarakum, ahsana suwarakum. Right. So then it's like ahsana suwarakum. So it's like husn is like something that God gives us, or like it's an act, right? Ahsana. It's a causative verb. And there is a name connected to that as well. It's not in the 99. It's like one of these secret poems.
Mm,
It's Sufis recite Muhsin, Al-Muhsin. So Allah is Al-Muhsin.
right.
And I was thinking about that versus so that's like I mean here it's like ahsana suwarakum because the thing is with surah al-musawwir I'm sorry I missed pretty much everything so I don't know what was said and not said but there's the hadith of إن الله خلق آدم على صورته. Did you guys discuss that?
I mean, discuss the idea of the word surah, right, as generally meaning image, right, or
Right, so in
appearance.
that it's like, yeah, so in the tafsir, like I guess the tashrih rather, of that, it talks about how like Surah He, the He refers to Allah, that Allah created Adam alayhi salam in His image, but that cannot mean the physical image, so it actually means the image of the names of Allah. And so Adam alayhi salam is Allama Adam al-Asma' kullaha, and also we are created in the image of the names of Allah. And therefore, and that's like the basis of like Ibn Arabi's teachings, like that we are the mirror for God to see His attributes manifested, and that is why we're able to be the Khalifa because we can put on the names. Takhalluq bi akhlaqillah, we talked about that. So that's a surah, and that's like husn. So surah is Masawir is actually connected to the names, I guess, more, in a way that other names aren't. Like I guess it's kind of like a manifestation of the the actor, I guess. That's how we receive the names of God through Al Musawwir because Allah created us in His surah. I just thought that was really intimate. And the other thing was about like I think it says about حور العين that فيهن خيرات حسان. So that is definitely physical beauty. Um, Also Allah says to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're not allowed to marry any more wives, even if you're like their husband, right? So that's also physical beauty. So husn is physical beauty, but I mean, so that's I mean, at least one of its senses is physical beauty. But obviously, Allah doesn't have, you know, physical attributes. And so it's like lahul asma'ul husna. So like, what else is it? Of course, it's like excellence, beauty, like good character. But yeah, I'm just wondering like, what's the link between husn and jamal, and like what not like what's the difference between them? Because they just seem very similar to me.
That's an interesting couple of points. Uh, so I would say usually when I try to disambiguate like different roots like that, I try and kind of break the roots apart. So I mean, you can even kind of see, you can even kind of hear it in the sound, right? So husn, right, has like a very like a softer kind of sense to it. Has, right, in Arabic alone without the noon, it refers to sensation, right? A physical touch. It can mean like in colloquial Arabic, like hassa can mean to like touch something, or can mean to feel something or have a sense for something. Whereas when you say Jamal, right, the Jim in Arabic is much more robust, I think. It's much more like punchy. Um, Jamma, I think, means to collect, or I think it has the sense of like something big. Jim in general, the J sound, even not just in Arabic, but other languages as well. I think it always has this sense of like power and greatness. So I think that's kind of the general difference. I'd have to do a little bit more decent research to give you a better answer there. I don't know, Ammar, if you have any thoughts on that. But the other thing I wanted to say about the whole like created in God's image thing, I don't know. I kind of want to challenge that, but I don't know like if you made a reference or we said afahsana suwarakum, right? And there's lots of different things in the Quran that talks about like our image and God perfecting our creation in our image. But being created in God's image, I feel like that's more a Christian idea. I don't think that's really I don't think we use the same exact language in Arabic. I could be mistaken. The only thing that I think comes close to that is like, Allah says in the Quran, that when Adam was created, or when mankind was created, فَنَفَخْنَا فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِنَا, right? So we blew into the creation of the human being, min ruhina, from our ruh, from our spirit, or from our soul. And there's different interpretations as to what that means. Like, what is God's ruh? Some people might just say it's, in some contexts it refers to the angel Gabriel. In another context, it could refer to, like, the essence of Allah, or like, his pattern, or uh, his majesty, and his beauty and greatness as well. I think all those meanings are tied in there as well. But yeah, I don't know if you have some thoughts on that. If you have some references, it's like where that idea comes from, of like being created in God's image. Um, I mostly hear that from Christian like speech. I've never really found language in Arabic thought that kind of. I mean, just to connect it to one more idea, in the Quran there are several like anthropoform uh, anthropomorphization. I'm not saying that word right. My brain is anthropomorphization. Anyway, is attributing, like, Allah describes Himself in human terms, right, in the Quran, in several places. Like, the hand of God is mentioned in the Quran. Um, Allah describes Himself as Sami'an Basir, right, all seeing, all hearing. But He also in the Quran describes human beings with the same words. There's another ayah that talks about Allah yukshafu an saq, right, which is like a really controversial. It was a really controversial like ayah, because it literally means Allah exposes His shin, right, right. That's what the literal translation of those words mean. So again, like, how does Allah have a shin, right? Like, or how does He have a throne? It's another kind of like a human sort of thing. So all these things are kind of similar to the idea of Allah creating us in His image, but again, just because this is a discussion about language, being like very precise and meticulous about the language that we use to describe ourselves and God and reality in general is one of my main objectives. But yeah.
Yeah, can I share the hadith?
Which hadith?
The reference for this. So it says, عن أبي هريرة قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا قاتل أحدكم أخاه فليجتنب الوجه فإن الله خلق آدم على صورته. قال النووي وقال طائفة يعود إلى الله تعالى ويكون المراد إضافة التشريف واختصاص. So it's pretty widely accepted even by people who are like not Sufi that suratihi means the image of God.
Mm.
I mean, yeah, he refers to God. And the other thing was about, but it's not like, yeah, it's not, it's just. So the other thing is about like what you said about God having, for example, I think even arms, like two arms, right? بَلْ يَدَاهُ مَبْسُوطَتَانِ, I think it says,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So like two, or they say that God's hands are tied. No, His hands are actually widespread, so like spread out. And so then it's the question of like, but you said God describes Allah describes Himself in human terms, but that's a very that's the anthropocentric way of thinking. So
Right.
Dr. Ali, our teacher who used to like read, we used to read Ibn Arabi with, he told us that yes, of course, these are literal, like that is a literal description of God. But our issue is that we think we are the haq, but we are not.
Exactly.
Allah is like Allah's Yadullah is the haq. My hand is the metaphor. Ainullah is the haq, or Yadahu, both his hands. Those are the haq, the real hands, and our hands are the. We think, oh, God is saying hands. That means it might be it must be God's hands are a metaphor. But no, He's real. You're the metaphor. So it's
Exactly.
like, why did we think that, like, oh, when God is saying hand, God is saying I, you just need to have to, like, what's it called, dodge it and say, oh, no, no, it must be a metaphor. But
Right.
you think, like, you're real and that God has to describe Himself in metaphors. But that means that we don't actually know what yad means. And we don't actually know what eyes means. We don't actually know what basar means. That means that is the reality of God. And so I don't know if we discussed it in this class, but I'm definitely sure I brought this up in I think we did speak about this, right, Umar? أولي الأيدي والأبصار.
Yeah, I remembering
واذكر
that
في
phrase.
الكتاب.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We talked about this. So, like, I think Ibrahim alayhi salam and one more prophet, Allah mentions them as ulil aidi wal absar. That means people who have hands and eyes, or sorry, sight. But like, what does that mean? I would, I'm apparently I have alhamdulillah hands and sight, but that's not, like him singling out those people shows that there's a deeper reality that they actually have a real idea and afsar, I guess, which not everybody does, because otherwise, what's the point? And also Allah says like, um, kama like that, some people will be resurrected, أعمى يوم القيامة, and they'll say, why did you resurrect me? No, sorry, no, yeah, that one. But then, no, sorry. So there's
لما
the
حشرتني
ayah
أعمى.
where,
Yeah.
yeah, but it says the other ayah where it says, ولكن تعمل قلوب. No, sorry. It says, هل is the blind person equal to the person who sees?
هل يستوي الأعمى
But it's
والبصير.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also like when it talks about صم بكم عمي فهم لا يرجعون,
Yeah.
it's not actually talking about what we literally say is deaf and mute and blind, but that's actually literal, right? Like according to our terminology, that's not literally true, but actually it is literally true because God is talking about real sight and real speech and real things.
Right. Well,
But
also,
metaphorically, that person has sight and hearing and things, but they don't really have it. So when Allah talks, like, that's the real terminology and not our terminology. Like we don't, but we project, as though ours is the real, or like or I guess the point of reference is what I meant to say. Like that's not the point of reference.
yeah, no, that's yeah, I see exactly what you're saying, and that's exactly how I think of it as well. But that's actually also the same reasoning that I have for why the idea of being created in God's image is a little bit strange for me. Um, uh, but I see where you're going. But it's, okay, how do I? So now we're shifting kind of from a discussion on language to kind of like metaphysics and theology. And maybe none of us are super qualified to speak on these things, but I think what you're saying is very true, right? That like, our reality is not the reality, right? And this goes back to like, the classic problems in philosophy. I was like, the problem of evil. Like, why does God create evil? Well, what's evil? What's good, right? You don't get to decide. Allah gets to decide, right? So what's a hand? What's a shin, right? You don't get to decide. Because and this goes back to the main, one of the main ideas in a lot of the research and a lot of the motivation behind this kind of study is that perception is limited, right? Perception in a lot of ways is an illusion, right? And I think we find that in mystic thought, in Ibn Arabi. I think we find that in the Quran even, right? Like, this dunya is uh, mata' mata' al-ghurur, right? Like it's an illusion of arrogance and pride and I'm not translating ghurur great here, but like, like we think we see, right? We think we see the truth when obviously, I mean, we have to think that in order to get up in the morning and function in the world. But we also have to keep in mind that our perception is limited. We can't see everything. We can't understand everything. But at the same time, I think there is also like a very kind of basic and obvious truth to some physical things, right? Like, the idea of God having a hand, right? The idea of God having, of God seeing, right? Like, there is like a universality to like a hand, right? The hand is like how you do everything, right? It's how you live and function. So it's how you give and take, right? So, Allah gives and takes, right? So that thing is kind of there as well. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm not disputing the idea of being created in God's image. I just want to kind of like I wanted to make that point that, right, like, so we don't fall into the trap of like anthropomorphizing God, right? That God's reality is the ultimate reality, not what we see or perceive or interpret. I think I had another thought, but
Yeah, I'm loving this conversation. And It's amazing. This is what I tried for.
Yeah,
I,
it's
I I wanted to say like one thing, like with language. So the idea itself that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala communicate with us through language itself at the core, it's can be um it's contradicted to understanding the ultimate truth, because language, the purpose of language is to build a construct for people to think so they can communicate. So it's limited by default.
right.
Language itself is
Yeah,
limited. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a mercy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is communicating through language,
exactly. Yeah.
because that itself is limited. Even when you say that Allah is infinite, that using that language itself is contradicted with the truth that Allah is beyond this limitation of this description itself. And that's at the core of understanding that it's from Allah's mercy that the language, it's a level, no matter what, how poetic or amazing the language is, it will never capture the essence of the infinity of Allah and Allah al-Quddus. And that's something I wanted to say, that there's also a different classification for the names: Jamaliya, Jalaliya, and Kamaliya. Asma al-Jalal, al-Jamal, al-Kamal. Like Quddus is considered as Isim Kamil.
Could you translate that real quick, just because we have some non-Arabic speakers?
Yeah, with the concept of beauty and majesty in the classification for Asma Allah al-Husna, the names of Allah and attributes
Well, Kamal would
in
be more
the
like
field.
Kamal would be more like, would you say beauty or perfection, completeness?
Perfection.
Yeah.
So there's a third class, which is perfect names. So
Yeah.
there's names and attributes within the beauty classification, and there's the majesty classification, and there's the perfect
Yeah.
forms of names and attributes, and even al-Malik, one of the perfect Isim Kamil. So with the concept of beauty and majesty, it's the duality. They even say that it's described that the duality is always there, and with that duality, the perfect balance between beauty and majesty, that's the third class, which is the perfect form. So with the more um, all the attributes that classified as within the beauty class, they have the majesty embedded within. So it just the Jamal is more prominent, and the Jalal is more prominent on the other names.
Yeah.
And with that, even the concept of we were talking about beauty and how that comes with responsibilities, and there is majesty, but the rule is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that everything is embedded within His rahmah, within the mercy of Allah. Even adab and ghadab, Allah says that غلبت رحمتي.
Yes.
Like the rahmah is, so it's not the rahmah is the rule that Allah decided to have all creations and life itself covered with the rahmah. But that's why, like, there is adab and there is ghadab. There is Allah mighty and Allah punishment and anger, and but it's embedded within the mercy. But the mercy is no, like it's not a balance, like it's a scale, and they are equal. The rahmah is more.
Right.
Everything through the rahmah. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to like I don't know, like a step like back, like one step back, and then just with the concept of the rahmah is covering everything, and even with beauty and jamal and even with husn and jamal. I love how you approached it with with the jim and with the noon.
Yeah.
With the jim, it's the rule for the jim is to have something powerful, and the power is going outwards.
Yeah.
So the and the noon is no, with the jim is distilling down, and the noon is exactly the opposite, is radiating out.
Right.
And that's why with the husn and jamal in comparison, jamal is more like a distilled, the concept of like distilling the beauty itself. That's why it's very concentrated in a way that it's prominent, and people can, it would be the first thing to see or to perceive
Right.
is the beauty. And then with the noon, it's coming from within and it's radiating. And that's why even like with Al Hassan and Al Hussein, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam chose these names. Ali ibn Abi Talib, Karamallah wajhi, he wanted to name them different names. But Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told him like, no, Al Hassan. And then when time to Hussein, Ali wanted to name them different name, and he was like, no, his name is Al Hussein. And Al
Right.
Hassan and Al Hussein is a manifestation of that. It's like they are beautiful inside and out, from the core, and radiating that beauty um, to life itself. And that's why they are Sayyida Shabab Ahli Jannah. Their status and their level in Jannah is they are like masters of people, the young people in Jannah. So I know like you guys talked about a lot of things. I'm just trying to like have a like try to connect different things on a like a higher
Yeah.
level, or
No,
a
that
more a big picture.
yeah, that's exactly what these these conversations are about. We take one thing and we try and see how everyone, with their own experience, their own knowledge, their own background, how they all kind of view those different, the same thing. Um, yeah, I mean, just quickly, because you talked about language, we have some non-Muslim speakers, listeners, I think, and one of the important things about Islam and the Quran and these kind of studies is that uh, in even in Christianity and Judaism too, and all the monotheistic religions, right? There's the idea of prophets, and we share some of the prophets, right? And each prophet had their own miracle, right? And that's why we say that the last miracle that mankind received is through the Prophet, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And that's language, right? It's a linguistic miracle. Like Moses got, like all the other prophets got physical miracles that happened in the physical world in some way. Everyone could see it. Everyone in that time period could see it. But the final miracle of God is a miracle of language, right? And that's something that everyone can see for all time, right? You don't have to be present. And all the prophets had their own kind of miracles, right? Like if you go back to the beginning, Adam, right? I mean, his miracle was just, being created, right? And learning the names, maybe, right? And then you have Noah, right? He his miracle was building the ark. Allah inspired him to build the ark, and that's kind of the beginning of human innovation and craftsmanship, or inventing and creating things. And then you have, Musa with magic. Magic was big at the time of Musa, and Allah trumped that with he defeated all the magicians of that time. And then you have Isa, right? During the time of Jesus, right? Medicine was flourishing a lot, right? And so a lot of the miracles that Isa received, that Jesus received, were related to health and wellness, and like bringing the life back from the dead and curing the lepers, and that sort of thing. So yeah, like the miracle of language is unlimited, unending, and continues for all time. The other thing I want to mention real quick was just to go back to Zanira's mention about, like, our reality is not the or what we perceive as reality is not the true reality. It reminded me of, like, one of the very first etymological Arabic roots I ever learned. And it was from the 90s. I was probably a teenager, and it was Hamza Yusuf, right? And he was talking about the word in Arabic for man, right, which is rajul, right? And he said that اشتقت من الرجل, right? It comes from, or it shares a root with the word for leg, right? Rijl, right? If you take the three letters, you say rijl is leg, rajul is man, right? So very very close in sound. So his reasoning was, or the way he interpreted it was that, like, a man, right, in the Arabic sense, is not simply somebody who is male, right? Is not simply somebody who has male genitalia or whatever it is, XY chromosomes. A man in the Arab sense, right, is somebody who stands, right? Somebody who uses his legs, in a functional kind of way, moves himself, propels himself, or stands his ground, in some kind of way. Yeah, so I think that's it's a little bit of a stretch, but I think it also kind of points to that idea of, like, our perception is limited. Our reality is not the true reality. There's something about a leg, even, right? Like, just the same way that there's something about our eyes, and there's something about our hands that have you know um, you know realities outside of what we can perceive. Another thing that just came to my head, I think when you were speaking, Zanira, you were talking about, like, blindness, right? And I think there's an ayah in the Quran that specifically says that it's not the eyes that become blind, right? It's the hearts that become blind. I'm forgetting the ayah exactly, but ولكن تعمل قلوب التي, I forget the ayah.
في الصدور.
التي في الصدور, right? Yeah. It's not the eyes that become blind, it's the hearts that are in the chests that become blind. Yeah, and I think that's to bring it full circle back to the goal of these sessions, and the goal of in this application and the research is that, like, the heart is something that perceives as well, right? It's not just our mind. Right? We live in a modern world where science dominates everything, logical, rational thinking dominates everything, but we forget that we have a heart that is very critical to our perception and our understanding of the world, and also that we have a body, right? That we have a body that is it's all an interconnected system, right? The mind, the heart, and the body, just like the root and the form and context in language, right? They connect together, and they're a closed system. You can't operate with just one of them, right? You can't just view the world logically only, right? And you can't just view the world romantically and poetically only, right? You have to find a way to marry the two things. And also, our bodies, our physical bodies, we have to take care of our physical bodies and find balance, in our physical bodies, as well as if you don't regulate the physical container, the internal container of the mind and the heart are also not going to flourish either.
Oh my God, wow, subhanAllah. I just had a lot of things click, like so many things click. And if I start speaking, I feel like I'm gonna
No, you can go ahead.
go way off topic.
No, it's
Okay,
okay.
so first, what Mar said, I just wanted to say that it just reminded me of something about like Husn and Jamal, sort of answered my own question. It was about like, the name Jamil, like it's not in the Quran, but it's in the Hadith, right? And someone asked about like, what if you like your ride and your clothes to look good? And then Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Inna Allah jamilun yuhibbul jamal. So that's like a physical beauty,
Mm,
Jamil. And then in the Quran, Allah's always saying, Ahsinu, Inna Allah yuhibbul muhsinin. هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان, and that is not about physical beauty. And
right.
every single time that Allah is talking about ihsan, it is almost, except for the exceptions that we talked about, like husnahunna or khairatun hisan. Actually, maybe that's also, maybe we're just projecting. But yeah, maybe that's also about like women that are beautiful inside. Um, but then it's like, yeah, so it seems that ihsan or husn is more valuable to Allah in terms of in just by looking at, like it's more of an internal thing as well. It's an act thing, right? Like it's an embodied thing.
Right.
Whereas Jamal is more of like it, but that's the thing. Jamal is also an embodied thing, but I'm just saying like just in the context of where it's said. Okay, but what really clicked for me was what you said, Omar. So I just wrote it down, like what you said about Rajul and Rajul. I keep getting them mixed up because I'm not a native speaker.
Sorry about what?
In here, by the way,
You said that really fast.
Rajul and Rajul.
Oh, Rajul and Rajul. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I keep getting them mixed up. But also like in Khaliji, the I don't know if you know this, but the ja sound
The
is
ga. Yeah.
basically yeah. Sorry?
It's like they pronounce it ga, right? I think most Khalijis.
No, no,
Oh no,
no.
that's the
That's
qaf, right?
qaf,
Yeah,
qaf.
that's qaf, right? Okay.
Yeah, so it's like gittar. But no, the j sound has become ya. So
Oh,
actually, they
right,
don't
right,
say
right, right, right.
rijal, they say riyal.
Riyal.
Actually, it's
Oh.
not even masjid anymore. It's not majlis, majlis. Anyway, so so then I just wrote it down because like I've been having problems with my feet and I had to explain to the Ammo, like how to say, and I didn't know how to say it. But anyway, I just realized something about Rajul and Rajul, what you said, subhanallah.
Mm.
That makes so many things click for me, and the reason why is because Ibn Arabi talks about Rajul, by the way, Rijal, and he says Rijal is not like what you said. He
Mm.
says it is a maqam, it is a
Right.
spiritual station.
Right.
Not every man is a Rajul, and women can also be Rijal.
Right.
So I think it says in the Quran that Rijal fi al al-a'rafi Rijal, and like there's a place where there's but it's actually it refers to women as well, and then for that reason he also thinks that women would also have been prophets, including Maryam alayhi salam. And but yeah, so but what you said really reminded me of something very controversial. الرجال قوامون على النساء.
Mm.
So my teacher, he told us that qawwam actually doesn't mean someone who's meant to, like the way that the eye has been abused and misinterpreted, but he says that a rajul is someone, or a qawwam, sorry, is someone who stands up repeatedly and
Mm.
constantly for women. So that a man should, not a man, again, a rajul is someone, or that a real qawwam stands up for women and like advocates for women and stands up for them. And for example, Allah also says, "Kunu qawwamina bil qist,"
Right.
stand for justice, constantly stand for justice.
Yeah.
And so
And
it's
that's
not
for
like a
men and
verse of like
women.
oppression, right? No, but you know what really clicked for me here is that Allah doesn't say الذكور قوامون على الإناث, for example.
Right. Rijal.
It's not a masculinity, like it's not a just it's not a like it's not a sex thing.
Yeah. Well, I
That
mean,
means not all men actually
yeah, the way
able to even perform that.
yes, sorry to cut you off, but the way I always kind of think of it is that like there are many males, right? But and this is why I have a lot of problems with like some feminist thought, that criticize men, right? Because I don't think they're men, right? You're talking about boys, you're talking about males that have not developed fully, and you're putting all men in one group. But to be a man is like we're saying, not just a gender thing. It's standing up, being have standing for something. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was also wondering, but that got me thinking about. So yeah, it just says, that's very obvious that الرجال قوامون على النساء. That means not all men, but in like positive sense, like not
Exactly.
all men are even able to be qawwam. And
Right,
Allah is
right,
not
right.
saying that all men are qawwam. He's saying
Nice.
only rijal are qawwam, not all dhukur, because he does says, like dhakar is used in the context of inheritance, right? And so that's just like a sex thing, like based on whatever sex you were born with, that's what your inheritance depends on,
Right.
but then you're not able to access the name. And again, Qawwam is the manifestation of Allah's name, Qayyum as well, because Allah is the one that keeps us standing, maintains us, like, and I was thinking about specifically, but then now I'm just thinking about like, I don't know what Nisa means. Like, I mean, I don't know where it comes from. Like, I don't know the root of
Oh,
Nisa,
that's a big
but,
controversy too, actually. Because
yeah,
again, you'll
but I'm just
notice
thinking about
there's a weak letter
I'm
in
just
there.
thinking about it in terms of, oh, but I was just thinking in terms of like physical versus, because you said, like the physical world and the spiritual world, or like just, we need to marry them. And when you
Mm.
said marry, I was like, marriage is supposed to be between a man and a woman, right? So then it's like this thing about rajul, if the rajul is like in the physical world, because our feet, they connect us to the earth, which is the physical world. And oh, and you need feet to stand, by the way. That is like the most obvious connection between Rajul and Qawwam.
Mm.
Like you physically need feet to be able to stand,
Right.
or legs, right? Like
Right.
if you
Right.
don't have legs, you cannot stand.
Exactly.
So that means like if you need like that's like a very, I guess, yeah, like what you said about like linking, things in the physical world to the meaning. That means like you need to be a Rajul in order to be a Qawwam. You
Right.
cannot be a Zakar, I guess, because that one doesn't specify having feet.
Yeah.
Um, so then I'm thinking about just like how men are, I think, this is just my, not everybody needs to agree, but yeah, I think like men is, tasked with doing more, I guess, strenuous things in the physical world, such as, going to, yeah, well,
War,
some sort of
hunt.
jihad,
Yeah.
exactly, and things, and like going to work, like that's all, like doing like physical world things are like in more of men's jurisdiction,
Right.
while more spiritual things are mentioned for women. Like women are supposed to do more like internal things. And one of my teachers who also writes on Ibn Arabi, he told me that women are a manifestation of Allah's name al-Batin, and men are manifestations of Allah's name al-Zahir.
Mm.
And that's why like women are asked to wear hijab, because you're supposed to, like, your zahir is not, you're not here for your zahir, like you're supposed to be a manifestation of your inner is supposed to be,
MashaAllah.
the more. And also like in terms of like nisa'ukum harthul lakum, I used to find that really objectifying in the
Yeah.
beginning,
Right.
until I read this one woman, she wrote women are like a garden, and I was like, oh, that's suddenly it's not suddenly it's beautiful. But then I realized about like what a heart or like field is, right? Like it's a very internal thing actually, and like a man comes or a farmer comes and works the field, but that's like the man who needs to work in the physical world, whereas the woman or the field or the garden just holds space and nurtures internally in a way that you cannot see from the outside. You cannot see the plants germinating. You cannot see the seeds germinating under the soil, right? And you cannot even tell actually many times if it's fertile or not.
Right.
And things like that. So it's just like a botany thing for women, whereas for men it's more of like a physical world thing. But yeah, sorry, this has just become lesson in Islamic feminism, I guess. Sorry.
No, no, this is great. I always like getting into discussions on gender and stuff like that. They're always, always a challenge and always fun, and they always kind of. I mean, they don't always stir up emotions, but sometimes they do. Yeah, lots of thoughts there. We're almost at 2 hours, so maybe we should cut it short. But like, just to kind of answer your question about, where does nisat come from? It's another one of those interesting words, right? Where you have like, uh, it has a weak letter, like I said, right? But also going back to something that I mentioned all the way in the beginning, you weren't here, Zanira, but um, some roots have certain patterns and some roots don't have those patterns, right? And you can attribute it just to phonology and sound, right? Like those sounds were preferred, by those patterns produced sounds that were preferred by the Arabs, and some other patterns produce sounds that the Arabs did not prefer, right? But if you believe that sound has inherent meaning, it's not arbitrary, or it has some sense or some essence to it, then you have to also believe that the patterns, being in one root and not being in another root, it means something. Like for example, the example I gave earlier was that like there is no intensive form for the root for mercy, right? There's no intensive. There's because like and you can and it kind of makes sense, I think, you know, cognitively or psychologically or phenomenologically or metaphysically, because like how can you be uh, merciful intensely, right? It doesn't really make sense. But yeah, to go back to the women thing, so there's some controversy. Like I said, there's a weak letter in there, so that makes it a little bit tricky to figure out exactly what the root is. But generally, the opinion is that it either comes from uh, alif nun sin uns, uh, which means to socialize, right? That's the general meaning of that root, anyway. Uns is also like another word for human being, like like insan, and yeah, there's also a debate about like where does insan come from, right? Because they're similar to nisa, right? The sounds are very similar. So um, Yeah. Oh yeah, the point I was trying to make about nisa is that nisa is a plural word, but there is no singular, right? So like we could say rijal, which means men, and we could say rajul, which means man, right? There's a singular and a plural, but there's no singular for nisa. So that's one interesting point about how some roots have certain patterns that are not present in other patterns. So it's a curious question. Like, why is there no singular for women in Arabic using that root at least? But then the other thing is, so yeah, going back to the root. So some people say it comes from uns, right? Alif nun sin, ans, right, for nisa, which makes sense, right? Because women, it's some by some general account, are in some ways more social than men, right? So it kind of makes sense that socialness is attributed to femininity or women. But the other opinion, right, is that it comes from nasi, right? And this is also true for insan, right? The Arabic word for human, right? That it comes from nsya, right? So the noon seen ya, right? And nasi means to forget. Some people don't like that interpretation or that connection, right? Because then you're saying that like human beings come from the idea of forgetting, right? Or women come from the idea of forgetting. And honestly, I think my opinion is that both make sense, right? Like the idea of socializing and the idea of forgetfulness are kind of close to me, right? Because I think society is a test, right? Human beings, we test each other, right? Like society has many temptations, right? Socializing, a lot of socializing is just idle talk, right? Like you're just talking about nothing or small talk or, talking and not really saying anything, right? So, I think the idea of being sociable and socialness tied to forgetfulness, tied to women. I think the way women think is different than the way men think. I think men often. I mean, I'm not gonna say one is more forgetful than the other, but I mean the stereotypical kind of generalization is that women are more emotional than men, and men are more logical, which I don't think is true. I think it's more contextual than that. I think women are more emotional in certain contexts, and men are more emotional in some contexts. Um, but yeah, that's my little short little gender talk there. On yeah, took a huge tangent, but very fun.
So, but I feel like I don't like I mean it's definitely one of the meanings of uns, right? But I would say that uns means familiarity, attachment, like comfort, like someone that brings you comfort. I'll call that like anise.
Yeah,
And like those are the names that I would associate. But it's so interesting that you said that women are more sociable, and then you said there's no there's no singular for nisa. Maybe that's why, because we're meant to be in tribes, I guess.
yeah, yeah,
So the other thing I was thinking about also was it's really interesting that nisa and so the word for nisa and um insan, they have both the same possible etymologies, right? Both the etymologies. But also the word for imra'a is also, I think, I'm guessing, could also be the same as mara, right? Mara. How do you say man?
uh,
No,
mar.
person like human
Yeah,
being.
so mar is generally used for individual, but it's masculine, so it can refer to a man. And then you say mra'a with the ta at the end, or mra'atun, uh, and that would be for women. Yeah, that would be the word for. That would be another
Oh,
word for women.
so
Yeah.
is that just like a female man? Like, is
Um.
that how it's working? The grammar thing?
So
Or
mar,
no?
I don't know what the base verb means, but one of the ideas that you get from mar is muru'a, right? Which I,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Muru'a futur.
yeah, which is usually translated as like, it's usually associated with men. It kind of like, I think it kind of means even, it might even mean chivalry. Let me see if I can find an example here.
Yeah, I think it's like muru'a and futur, like they're kind
Yeah, I
of
mean, I know like
together.
mar
But again, that's like a station. Like that's not like a gender thing.
station.
But it's so
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
interesting
yeah. Like
that
rajul. Yeah, yeah. Mar. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Mar is an interesting root
not every
because
man
like
is a
it has,
mara, I would say.
yeah, it has man and woman in it, right? Like they both have. So it's like a really kind of neutral. In one sense, it's kind of a very neutral term
Gender neutral even perhaps?
yeah, because we use like there's the most famous hadith لكل امرئ ما نوى, right? For every imri'in, right, every every individual, there's he gets what he intended, right? And that's meant not just for men, obviously.
No, but it's subhanAllah, it's interesting because the hadith is actually about men. Because it's literally talking about the situation. I mean, it's not about men, sorry. But I mean, the situation is that if he travels to uh have to get married to a woman, so it's like specifically, that's so interesting. But that,
Oh, right, yeah, yeah, well,
yeah.
right, yeah. But it can be applied to as far as I know. I could be mistaken here, but I'm pretty sure mar can is used interchangeably to. Uh, I mean, there is a feminine version of the word, so I mean, if you can, you would just use that. But I think it's, kind of the way in Arabic we say like Muslimin is a masculine plural noun, but it refers to both men and women, because it's just that in Arabic you have to have one or two genders, so every word is either masculine or feminine. So the default is usually masculine unless there's a reason to make it feminine.
But it's also interesting that this has actually become about this at this point. Whatever. Zawj, like Zawj in the Quran is gender neutral.
Right. Yeah.
So that's
Which
which is so
is
interesting because it's beyond, then it's going beyond, like, the fact that there's only if it inflects on a verb, then it can't even be gender neutral. Like you said, like it can only be like with the if or without it. But then still God is using Zawj like very gender neutral in many, many places.
yeah. I mean, generally
خلق
just
منها
means
زوجها.
spouse, right? Like the way we say spouse in English, that's gender neutral. It can mean a husband or a
Yeah,
wife.
but English is different because English doesn't have like, English has it.
Yeah.
Arabic
Right.
doesn't
Right.
have
Yeah.
it.
Right. 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 Yeah. 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 We have a gender neutral. We have a neutral gender pronoun. Right. But you can also say zawja, right? So like you can make it feminine and be
Yeah, I don't
specific.
think, but that's the thing. So that's what one of my economic teachers said, but that's actually not like that's, I think, like, I don't know.
That's a
That's a
modern.
bid'ah.
Yeah, it's a modern thing. Yeah, it's
Because yeah,
definitely more colloquial.
it's never said in the Quran, I think. But yeah, I was also thinking about how, like, in terms of uns, I guess, like imra'a, for example, it looks like there's different times that Allah doesn't always refer to people's wives as their zawj in the Quran. And there's a difference. For example, he says imra'atu Nuh, imra'atu Lut. But then, like, I think even Imran. Um, but then it's like for Adam alayhi salam, it's uskun anta wa zawjuk al-jannah. And then so zawj implies, I guess, more of a more uns, I guess, more of like an actual like relationship, whereas imra'a just means like that they were married,
Oh, that's interesting.
like,
Actually, I've
but they
never.
they might not have been that great of a partner for their. I mean, like obviously imra'at Nuh, imra'at Lut, like, they weren't that great in terms of supporting their husbands, let's just say.
Sorry, I missed the last bit that you said because I never actually realized what you just
I
pointed
guess,
out
yeah, no, it was
about.
just this thing about that I've been thinking about, like, there's three words in the Quran, okay, as far as I know, that refer to husband, wife, and spouse. One is zawj. It can refer to a man or a woman. One is imra'a, which means a woman. Okay, so according to me, zawj means soulmate,
Hmm.
therefore it can refer to a man or a husband. Oh,
Right.
sorry, husband or a wife.
Right.
But it actually means not necessarily husband or wife. It means someone that you were created with. Now,
Right.
whether that's the person that you marry in this world or not, I'm not sure. Because the person that you marry in this world is called for a man, imra'a,
Right.
may or may not be a zawj.
Hmm.
For a woman, it's called ba'al,
Right.
ba'ulatihinna.
Right. Right.
And
But
then,
Baal can also be for a man, right? I'm pretty sure.
sorry?
I'm pretty sure Baal can also be for. It can also mean husband.
No, I'm pretty sure it only means, no, ba'al only means husband.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought you said
Yeah,
wife.
so I'm
Yeah.
saying there's three words like zawj, imra'a, and ba'al.
Hmm.
So imra'a and ba'al don't like imply, they just imply a legal relationship or a shar'i relationship. That this is like your person that you had a contract with, a nikah contract with. And then zawj implies something more like in the case, I think, like the peak or the I think the peak or the epitome of that is like Adam and Hawa. because like created from like one nafs and almost like created for him, like, and they're like perfect for each other, and like they're the only ones together. And there's just a level of intimacy because Allah always, someone pointed this out to me that whenever Allah's talking about them, like, in Jannah, He uses a dual form, and like that they did this and this, but it's like almost implying that they always did everything together, which I thought was so cute. But I don't think like that's sort of like, like dual, like kula, I guess, right?
Sorry,
Um,
kula.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what it said, but I'm just giving the example of the dual form. Like the
Yeah,
dual
yeah,
form is the verb that
yeah.
they both did this and they both would do that, and then they both um فَأَزَلَّهُمَا الشَّيْطَانُ, like shaitan misguided them both.
Right. In
I
reference
think it
to
says
Adam
that.
and Eve,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and
Yeah,
yeah,
so
as
it's
opposed
like
to
that's like a zoj.
right,
That's like
right.
they were just like partners in crime, literally.
Yeah, that's actually
Sorry.
really interesting because I think the confusion or the reason that this realization just came to me now is because in modern colloquial Arabic, like I would say zawjati, right? Or my mom would say, my mom would say zawji, right? To like my dad, or my wife would say zawji, right? But I would, and my dad would say, or me and my dad, we would say zawjati, right? We'd add that ta for ta'nith for femininity, but that's not present in the Quran, right? Like it's exactly like you said. Allah describes Adam's wife as zawj, not zawja, right, in the feminine form. So that's really interesting. I never realized that until you pointed that out. And the other thing that came to mind is the word ba'al. Is a pretty funny word for husband, actually, right? um, I haven't thought about this in a while, but ba'al, right, is a word that only means husband. Is it in the Quran? Did you say it was in the Quran?
Yeah, so it's like in terms of like, zina, the people that you're allowed to show your zina to.
Yeah.
لا تبدين زينتهن except for بعولتهن, and then the sons of their بعولة, sons of their husbands and their husbands, so it says بعولة.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's in the Quran six times meaning husband. Um, I don't know what it means here. There's no translation. It's kind of weird.
Why do you
أتدعون
find this
بعلا.
funny? Why is it a funny
Okay,
word?
yeah. So let me get to that. Right. So the root word, right? So the root meaning, or the base verb of ba'ila, right? It can mean to become a husband, right? But it can also mean to become confounded. It can also mean to become confused and perplexed. So I've always found that very, very funny. um, just because
That's so interesting because the word waliha, which means like maddening love. It can also mean confused,
waliha.
and yeah, like love, like intense love. And some
What
people say that.
what's the root again? Are you saying walaha?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. I never heard that word
wala.
before. Waliha.
Oh, that's like
Yeah, the root is wala.
important. It's important in like Sufism because it's like madness, like love to the point of madness.
Right.
So it's like love, like really intense love, but it is also confusion. And it can also mean sadness, actually. It's crazy. It just has like a lot of opposing meanings. It's like one of the words that we talked about. But
Yeah. The dad. The opposite terms in Arabic. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a common theme in some other Arabic words too, relating to love. But there's no sense of love here. That's why I find it funny. In Ba'al, there's no real sense of like. I mean, like, we can check here again. At least I don't remember when I might have missed it. But I mean, I find it funny because it's very like true to like modern, unfortunately, modern tropes and modern like depictions of modern husbands, right, as being kind of aloof, being kind of like, oh, they get married and they're like, oh, I don't know, like, my whole life is upside down now, my wife's driving me crazy, that sort of like uh, joke. It seems like it's in the Arabic
it's a boomer
language.
thing. Moving on. We're moved on now, I think.
Yeah, I think we have moved on a bit. You don't see as many like goofy dads on the internet. I mean, on TV shows as much anymore. But yeah, actually, yeah, the base meaning, actually, according to Lane here, is to become confounded or perplexed or lack strength. Um, uh, I guess it doesn't have a meaning of becoming, or ba'ala maybe is to become yeah, became a husband. So yeah, okay, yeah, interesting. This goes back to something that I mentioned 2 hours ago now, which is that like if you change the middle letter of the base verb in Arabic, you get different meanings. So usually the most common form is the fatha, or the open vowel, the open a vowel on the middle letter. So ba'ala, that means to get married or to become a husband or take a wife. But if you say ba'ila with the e sound on the middle vowel, that's when you get the meaning of a change of state, or an internal kind of change, which is here meaning to
Wait,
become
can you click
perplexed.
that? Can you click Baradan? What does it say?
To become perplexed or confounded, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you have so this is like one clear example here of what we were talking about earlier, how
Oh,
different
but I'm wondering, what does tabal mean? Because that's like duality, right?
Tabala, I feel like it also has
No,
something to
no,
do.
the one on top, tabal with the alif
Oh,
on the
taba.
left.
Oh, with the alif. Tabala. Let's see. Tabala. Let's see. Three in two places. So three is um, probably ba'alt. I could be wrong though. That's one of the limitations of taking a lane in this way. Um,
Wait, so what does intermarried mean? Intermarried with two people.
I think.
بنو فلان لا يبالون. Like, what does that mean?
I guess it
They
means.
don't like, oh, they don't like marry within the tribe or like
Yeah, I
outside the
guess
tribe.
yeah, I
Or,
guess
like,
it's referring to because like we said before, that alif, right? When you add that long a vowel after the first letter in a root, it usually means like duality of some kind.
like to each other,
Yeah, two people.
because I think it says here, to none is married to them, nor are they married. So
Yeah.
it's like to each other. But then that implies like Zouj kind of thing. That's what I was trying to like remove from the Baal. Like that's just, Baal is just, it's only for men. Like it's only the man. A married man is Baal.
Yeah. I think yeah, that sense is there here too, but it's more about like groups of people like not marrying or marrying with each other. I think that's the general idea I'm seeing here. Like it's referring to not just an individual marrying, but like groups of people marrying or not marrying with each other. I mean, it must have been like it must come from like a classist or a kind of like a kind of classism or a kind of race colorism, even like
Tribalism.
yeah, or tribalism, exactly. Like, oh, these tribes don't, uh, what does it say? Or la, oh yeah, la yataba, la yubailun, right? Like these groups of people don't marry with these groups of people. So I think that's the idea here. But wow, yeah. So we're going longer and longer each week. It seems like. But khair, inshallah, very insightful, very it'll be interesting to see how the AI summarizes this this conversation.
Oh my God, is he here? Is the AI note taker? He's not here.
Oh yeah,
He's not in my
I didn't
call.
add it because the note, for some reason, it cuts off at a minute, at an hour and 90 minutes, it seems like. So it's easier if I just extract the audio from the recording and then upload it to the tool to do the whole AI summarization thing. So I should have that later today,
Wow, I
inshallah.
shared too many personal things in this conversation, not remembering that a robot is going to be listening into it
No, I
and
mean,
summarizing it and
the
putting it in a report that is going to be published in the group.
no, I mean the report is made to be like generally, just the main points that we discussed. So I don't think it's going to get into like, it doesn't mention any names, or like it doesn't say like, oh, this person mentioned this. There are some really beautiful and interesting reflections that it collected, that it pulled out of the transcript, which I'm really really impressed with. Um, but yeah, we'll see what happens. And of course, feel free to look at it and add comments to it. We can, I think, if inshallah, if Allah gives us the blessing to make it to 99 names, or however many roots or words that we discuss, we can compile them into kind of like a book. And I think it would, I think it's a lot to go on YouTube and listen to a 2 hour to 2 hours of people talk kind of randomly and without structure. I don't know how. I mean, I have a lot of fun having these conversations. I don't know how fun it is to listen, but I think there's still a lot of benefit that people can draw from it, and I think the transcripts and the AI summary is a really really cool way to do that. And I think more lecturers and more speakers should really it would be cool if we can kind of try and do it with some of the other classes and book clubs that we have in this community. It does cost a little bit of money, so we'll see how we can manage that in the future, inshallah. Okay, Khair, any final thoughts or any more tangents anybody wanna take?
Yeah,
No,
so I
I
just want to say
Wow.
Jazakallah khair for the sessions and Brother Omar and Brother Omar. It's been like fantastic listening, and I've been like blown away by the insights shared. And my sister just joined today, and she was like, "Wow!" Like she felt out of place, and I had to kind of like send her a few messages saying, "Hey, don't worry, this means this, file means this," and it takes a bit of time to get around it. And she was like, "Are these like, do I have to say something?" Yes, no, don't worry. And she was just like, I think it hits you differently when you're coming in from like different sessions and classes, and then you walk into something like that's like in the middle of like the 99 names,
Right.
and it's very linguistic, it's very technical, but I had the same impression when I first joined as well. I just love it, and like I hope I benefit from this inshallah and I retain something. And I think more to your concern about like how to kind of like have this recorded and what the recording means to people who are going to hear it later, I think it's really more beneficial for those who kind of like are part of the chat as well in the Mashroba community.
Right.
And I guess anyone by extraction who's kind of like eavesdropping or listening in, they'll kind of like derive benefit, but it's different than being, integrated in the community and then having like doing your own studies and then taking part in the live. But it's beautiful, mashallah. I wouldn't change it for anything. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah khair so much. That's very inspiring. Um, yeah. Uh, Thank you so much. And thanks for everyone that participates. I'm thinking about like, going live. I mean, this is live, obviously, but like, if there are people that are in the group, if you know people that are not in the group, like my friend Ammar here, who joined today, he's not in the Mushroba community. I can add him to the group. I think Mushroba has like some protocols as to how they want people to add people to the group. But yeah, I mean, we can certainly expand this to people that are not in the group. So feel free to share the link. There's a document in the group that you can share with people that has more information about my research and a link to the a link to this Google meeting, so they can join even if they're not part of the group. But I'm thinking if there are a lot of people that are interested, I've seen a few people tell me that they're interested, that are not in the group and that are also not Muslim. So like I'm thinking maybe I can just start going live on YouTube so people that want to join in, can just tune in live and they don't have to be in the Mushraba group, or like be even in the Google meeting and feel pressure to speak or something like that. I miss a lot of the messages in the chat here from Asmat mostly, but I'll take a look at those, and if there's anything I can follow up on, I will add it to the group,
You can
inshallah.
only take it. You can only take a look at them now because I'm pretty
Uh,
sure you can only take a look at
yeah,
them privately.
I'll just copy and paste it. I don't think there's anything. Oh, I'll
No,
take a
there's
look at it.
nothing time sensitive when, oh, well, sorry, there's nothing that needs to be followed up on. A lot of my comments were just not to interrupt Brother Amor and yourself when you guys were talking. It was just kind of like a little side comment. It definitely doesn't need like its own like attention on its own. It was just kind of like when Brother Omar was talking about how everything is, um, is kind of like safeguarded or like in an equilibrium of some sort. And I was like, oh, I was suggesting the word fine tuning for that, but there's nothing else that I think needs to be elaborated unless Brother Omar himself wants to add something in the chat and the conversation can continue.
Well, so
I think,
uh,
Omar, can you see what she wrote about Kamal? Kamal in Urdu means incredible.
yeah,
Like if we like this is just like we say, oh my God, that's amazing. It's
yeah,
almost like
yeah.
even Hajib is used in Arabic.
I kind of feel bad that I kind of like every time something is said in Arabic because of the amount of loan words we have, I'm like, oh, in order we say this is how we take it, and I'm like, they'll be like, oh, probably rolling their eyes, like, yeah, but this is Arabic.
No,
It's
actually, no, no.
No, you
That's
should
for
always
that
share that.
because
no, no. Always,
it's
yeah.
so interesting to contrast it.
Yeah, no, because that's
But
really,
it's
really
not a
important.
contrast though, right? Because Omar, I
It's
don't
an
know. So when
extension.
I studied Arabic in school, and I'm like my first language is Urdu, but I read a lot of books in Urdu. Like I read more books in Urdu probably than in English. So I knew a lot of Arabic like content was just from knowing Urdu words, and this is how the teacher would be like, oh, you know this word, and I'm like, oh, we know, like I know what that means. So Urdu has so many loan words from Arabic, and a lot of them have the same meaning. But it's interesting to see, like, so for example, غريب. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if you use like ajib or gharib like if they're like linked to each other, but gharib in oh, what was I trying to get at? Yeah, ajib ajib in Urdu is used to mean what gharib means in Arabic.
Right, right,
And gharib in Urdu is used to mean what faqir means in Arabic.
right, right, right. Yeah,
That's so true.
I've come across this before. Yeah, it's interesting. But just to your point, Asma, no, it like like in linguistics we call this like cross linguistic phenomenon, right? It's just like finding things that are similar in different languages. I think English and Arabic are kind of opposite in a way. So there's like something that we can kind of do in English that we can't really do in Arabic, in the same way that Arabic does something, with its roots and with the fact that the Quran has preserved the language for, almost 1500 years. There are things that happen in Arabic that cannot happen in English. So every language has something to offer. And Urdu is actually a really interesting example to lean on because Urdu is a lot like English, right? Arabic is very like I don't want to say pure, but like very like it's its own thing, right? I mean, we do have loan words too, right? But not as many as other language. And even when we do take loan words in, a lot of times we adopt them. We make them fit the structure of Arabic. Whereas English has a Germanic base, but we have a lot of loan words from Latin and a lot of loan words from English. Sorry, from Greek, right? So it's like mostly German, English, and Greek. That's what English is. So like that's why we don't have,
And French.
yeah, and of course some French, but
If I
mostly
if
Greek
I
and
may say, oh yeah, sorry to interrupt.
no, go ahead. Yeah, I was just gonna
Please,
say,
no, no, please continue.
yeah, I was just gonna say, and that's similar to Urdu, right? Because Urdu has a Persian base mostly, right? Then a lot of loan words from Sanskrit and Hindi and Arabic. So it's also kind of like what some people call a mutt language, right? Because it's a mix of all these different things, which adds its own kind of unique perspective, but also it loses some of its history. So it's interesting in a lot of different ways. So please, if you ever have any kind of other languages that you want to connect to what we're talking about, it's always a great idea.
Thank you.
And I was going to say that me personally, I'm a big fan of Urdu, and is exactly for the reasons Omar you just mentioned. Because I think with each language is very unique in a way that it constructs how you think with that language. And with Urdu, it got like it's Arabic, Persian, and then Hindi in a way that it's very unique, and I think it's very poetic. So I'm a big fan of Urdu, and I have a lot of my friends that whenever we talk about languages, I learn a new thing about Urdu, and I think it's a fascinating language. So please, if there's anything, me personally, I would love to learn about Urdu and to make all these connections.
Yeah, for sure. Please always, if you can. Well, one thing I just want to ask you, Asma, is what you meant by, I think you said something about fine tuning, but then you also said something about singing in, like you said something is bizarre and singing in a
Oh
different
yeah. So
frequency. Yeah, well,
basically, when the mention of Bida came up, the
ah,
conversation about how if you were speaking to a microphone, that kind of it was very like timestamp style. So
right.
basically,
Okay, I
when
see.
in context, I was like, well, if that's the case, then using that logic, you could distort that in many different ways. So if I was to distort my voice, or to sing in a way, or using a certain tonality, you could go down the rabbit hole of you know illogical kind of conclusions on that basis. And I think sometimes when you get fatwas and stuff like that, it ends up being a bit a bit weird. But it was very kind of like a
Context thing, yeah.
impromptu thought. It
Gotcha.
was nothing deep in there, no depth to be searched.
No,
But
no, no. I
the brother
just,
Omar said something about how languages travel, and how there's a certain curiosity he holds for how languages develop. myself, there's one thing that I find very interesting is how Urdu, and I don't speak proper Urdu. I've only learned it from growing up around, like the diaspora community, and also from watching movies from the subcontinent, and also being, exposed to music culture more than literary culture. So it did, and a lot of the music culture from India contained a lot of Urdu words. So a lot of the lyricists were who used Urdu words properly for many of their songs. The great majority contain Urdu songs, and that creates a lot of debate and antagonism as well within the nationalist community in India. And there's a whole debate down that language and identity politics. But for me, what was interesting is what meaning of Arabic Pakistanis generally, and I'm sure Indians have the same thing in other communities that speak Urdu, but specifically how Pakistanis will pick a certain meaning and expound on that, and then take it in a different direction. So if there's, let's say, if there's three or four meanings, they'll hold on to one. And I'm always curious about the history of how one word took hold regionally, how one word developed more weight, whereas traditionally in the culture it might not have. So whoever introduced it either added a certain weight, and the weight was kind of, I would say, the way the word got cultivated and nurtured, or kind of like grew and got planted and fed, well, watered, it just goes in a very different direction. So you might get the, how Zanera said, like the harib and the ajib.
Mm-hmm.
You might get those kind of like very extreme definitions or the antonyms rather than synonyms and stuff, and you'll end up with something. And this is why sometimes when Pakistanis will read Quran, they'll get a sense of, I more or less, I think I can kind of figure what this ayah will say. And then when they read the translation, they're like, oh, subhanAllah, we were really off.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, to me, the way I've kind of thought about it in the simplest sense is that every language has its own kind of logic, right? And it's kind of a controversial idea because then, people get, I mean, at least within the linguistic community, why a lot of people don't like this idea is then because then you start comparing like languages and you start saying like one language is better than another. And then, a lot of academic institutions and intellectuals they don't want to touch that. They don't want to go there. They don't want to get involved in that kind of politics. So that's why these kind of discussions are maybe not that popular and controversial sometimes. But I think every language has something unique to offer in terms of understanding the world, understanding ourselves, and even understanding God.
For sure, subhanAllah.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just add a fun fact about Urdu,
Yeah, of course,
which I
please.
never even realized? In Urdu, we have one word for yesterday and tomorrow. There's no way to differentiate yesterday and tomorrow.
Oh yeah, my wife told me about this
The
a
word
while
is
ago. I didn't
kal.
forget.
It's just kal, which just means, I mean, we can say like the tomorrow that's coming or the tomorrow that went by, aane wala kal gaya.
Mm.
But you have to like say that. But mostly it's just like from context. But I just thought about, just I don't know like what that means about like maybe
Yeah,
someone knew that linear time isn't real and like you can't, like it's all everything everywhere all at once. It's all,
Yeah, time is
yeah,
an
I don't
illusion.
know.
Yeah, time is an illusion for
Yeah.
sure. What's
I
the word
think that's
again?
really beautiful.
Well, that is maybe a way of
Kal.
thinking. Somebody thought of, I'm just kind of laughing about this, but if someone was to say, did you do this? Oh, I put it to kal. Kal could be yesterday or kal to tomorrow. So
Is that how it ends up being used, like colloquially?
no, not really, but I'm
Oh,
trying to say
okay.
it as the inshallah kind of thing.
Right,
But
right, right.
apparently
Yeah.
in Arabic, I heard, and I'm going to kind of like stop it on that, but I heard that there was a use of certain words in Arabic where it contained multiplicity of meanings, so that if you were cornered, you could always bail out and go to another meaning. And there's a lot of play on words where you could do that. Is that common, or is that just specific to maybe poetry or something else?
Yeah, I think it's common in poetry, and like stories and stuff like that. I mean, you find that in every language, right? Every language has like, layers of meaning in words as
So
well.
it's kind of like wit then, being witty with words then.
Yeah, yeah. My favorite example is like, we're never gonna finish. But my favorite example is like Shakespeare. Actually, he says, he uses the idea of pregnancy, right? I think it's in Hamlet. He says the idea of being pregnant with thought, right? And I find that to be really beautiful and also embedded in the idea of Quran, right? Because qara'a, the base word, it can mean to read, And that's where we get the idea of Quran. But we also, like classically, the original meaning of the verb قرأت الناقة, we would say the camel, the she camel became pregnant. So it's the same kind of idea, right? Of like, yeah, and you find this in language over and over again, like in like the idea, the word for self, right, in Arabic is nafs, right, which is related to breathing, right. In Latin, you have spirit, right, which is related to breathing. Spiritu means to breathe or breath. So this is all going back to like my research
Oh,
and
you know, also there's like hayat and hayawan, life and animal, and anima is like spirit also, I think. Like the origin of animal is
oh right,
also
anima,
like
yeah,
life.
yeah, anima, like for something to
Hayatun.
animate, yeah, for something to be animated. Also, you find it in Jungian philosophy, like the animus and the anima, right? Yeah, same thing. So all
Wait,
these,
sorry, I don't, I forgot, but I'm just gonna shameless plug in. Inshallah, we're gonna be doing. We're looking into words that are their own opposites. I think that's also something that Asma was getting at. But there are a lot of words in
That'd be
Arabic
very
that
interesting,
are their
actually.
own opposites. It's insane. Like, because I would get these words that I would just feel guided to pray for something in my dua, and then I just look at the English words and I'm like, sorry, God, I didn't mean this one, I meant this one. And I'm just like, we were supposed to pray it in Arabic, right? You
yeah,
know, for example, a riq, right? Like it means gentleness, delicateness, and this is one of the words in Ibn Arabi's Shaykh al-Aqba's حزب الوقاية
riq,
رقتي رأفتي رحمتي
riq. Oh, okay, yeah,
برقة رأفتي. So it's like the softness, the delicateness,
right,
fragility, like very gentle, but it also means slavery.
right, riq.
And like, and I'm like, it's just insane. Like, there's so many words that are their own opposites, like that can mean the same, like the actual other end of the spectrum. You wouldn't even imagine. But then, like, if I'm sitting here praying for like riqqa, but then I'm like, which one? Like, and because in another, it is a dhikr in the Shadili tariqa, which it mentions, uh, I forgot tahir, tahira min riqil aghyar. They're purified from the slavery of others. Again, it's the same word riq. So like there, you're actually asking for protection or purity from riq, but here you're asking for riq. So
Wow.
it's just like, well, which one goes? Like, do you know what I'm saying? I'm like, I don't know, like, because I want to pray in Arabic, right? Because like that's the word that Allah, sorry, the language that Allah chose for His final message. But then I'm like, is it like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's interesting. I have to think about that a bit more, the connection there. And eventually we'll get to the, I think, inshallah, Allah will give us the inspiration and the capacity to be able to juggle so many different things. But yeah, I do really want to do the opposites thing because like it's one of the most important aspects of the Arabic language. Maybe we can make it a little bit more structured than these conversations, so we're not doing too much. But inshallah, I think
You're asking the wrong person
yeah.
if you expect me to be the one.
No. I mean, it's just I think once I get to a certain point with the Minders application, I'll have a lot more time to kind of dedicate to this Lisān Lab or Sound Lab or whatever we want to call it. These conversations and start some different series besides the 99 names. Um, yeah, inshallah. May Allah make it easy, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakumullah
Uh,
khair, everyone.
Thank you for inviting me and had an amazing time. And
Yeah.
with every single thing said, like there is a million thoughts that
Yes. Yeah.
come to my mind,
Yeah.
and I love the conversation. I love the project, and thank you very much
Thank you
for
for your input. That was really useful to hear like what two high level people are sounding like when they're talking about things they know.
Oh, please. You all praise us too much. It's really about just sharing perspective, right? Like, yeah, it's really, that's the main thing. Well, we all
I
have
guess from
something.
lay people's perspective, like I can speak for myself. Like it does hit me. It's really informative and really entertaining. So sorry if I did anything or said anything that kind of like rubbed your ego in a way that it shouldn't have, for pride. But may Allah facilitate it. What you're doing is right, and it's really got you've seen like Zinera's enthusiasm. She's been on fire today, and I've been loving it. She's very self conscious of it, but it's been very enjoyable, and I can't wait to go back and listen to this conversation again, inshallah, and create some time where I can actually like listen again and think and really like reflect on some of this because it's been packed with ideas. And I think this is what, Lisān Lab is probably meant to become, just generate so much energy and ideas that it's firing different direction until it takes the shape of its own or something.
Exactly. No, that's the hope, inshallah. And if
SubhanAllah, actually, Hamza, thank you so much for, what you said earlier about it not being a class. I
yeah,
think that's like the strength even of this.
uh,
Because like what Amar just said about like, like it just one thing sparking so many things. I feel like you not being I still consider you my teacher, but you not this not being a class, but just like the flexibility of it offers space for us to be able to do those things, to build those connections, and then to actually just like the freedom to just I don't want to say yeah because I don't like it, but my kids say it in class all the time. But anyway, but yeah, just like talk a lot, and so that's something that cannot be done, I guess, in like more structured classes, like actual classes. So thank you.
And I
it's
think it's a true reflection of the fluidity of Arabic language. I mean, I
yes,
love it. The whole setup
yes,
and the conversation. It's a true reflection of the essence of that fluidity of Arabic language.
absolutely, absolutely. And I'll send the report as soon as I can, as soon as I have it ready. And if you guys have more thoughts, add it to the chat, add comments to the document, and inshallah, we can compile all of these things in the future, and inshallah, it has benefit for other people.
Inshallah, jazakum Allah khair.
Jazakumullah khair, everyone. Until next time, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم everyone.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you.
Alaikum assalam, everyone. Salam.